As we open up for bids of power and be aware of the adversary consciousness and our inner ego structures, we're going to encounter this fear that can be held as we pursue power. But what if I go into the path of power abuse? In your particular industries and roles, you probably know so much about the signs and the behaviors and the patterns of power hoarding and abuse in the systems in which you live and work. As one of my teachers in alchemy says, if you plan to transmute something, you have to understand it. So if you want to transmute poison, you're going to have some poison lying around your kitchen. To change the systems that you want to see different for a different vision for humanity, you have immersed yourselves in them and you understand them very, very well. Here's where we're going to dive in and see a little bit more about the mechanics of power abuse and how we can feel more equipped to be agents of transmutation. I like to think of power abuse as using power for the benefit of some with negative impacts to others, whether that's done consciously or unconsciously. And honestly, most of the time in my work in organizations, it's done unconsciously by leaders. They don't even know the power they have and how they're not considering their employees, they're not taking them into account, they might not be taking their community into account, and so it's really about widening awareness. But this power abuse can occur when we're operating from our ego and our sense of separateness and not really coming from our essence and our commitment to having wider awareness and taking bigger responsibility. There's a symbol called the ouroboros, which you've probably seen it, but it's basically a picture of a snake in a circle biting its own butt. And the way that Catherine McCowan describes this is that she's like, oh, it's basically like seeing a skull and crossbones on something. Yes, it can also represent the wheel of life turning around and round, but what she talks about is that it represents a closed belief system. And you know when you're encountering an ouroboros energetically in the realm of power abuse is you feel like you're in a windowless, doorless room. It's a closed belief system that doesn't allow space for new things to emerge, for the mystery to come through. It's a trap. And in power abuse, there's always a trap based on a lie. This is seen in the disconnection narrative that evolved from humans thinking they're separate from nature. The changing interpretation in the Bible of humans having dominion over the fish of the sea, the animals of the land, the birds of the air, where dominion initially meant stewardship in the first writings and evolved in its translation to mean control over. The construction of this civilized savage binary that we use to justify colonization and genocide of native peoples in North America. The invention of the idea of race in order to enslave people from the African continent and elsewhere. The creation of the science of eugenics to categorize races and type people for enslavement and persecution in Nazi Germany. There's always a lie. We just need to find it. And it's often not hiding that far below the surface. Because one of the main principles of life is that life is here to create conditions conducive to life. Life creates space for its own flowering and its own unique, mysterious expression. But wherever there's control and division, and again, those mechanics of the ego pattern, you know you're on the road to figuring out an ouroboros is in the room. Whenever it feels like there's disconnection, or better or worse, you can smell that you're on the way to finding an ouroboros and uncovering the lie or the trap that's underneath the system of power abuse. In business, or organizations, the mechanisms of power abuse often relate to money. As in, we can't focus on our people. We don't have budget or time for that. We have to move forward. Sometimes they're just trade-offs. You'll often see it as this false construct of consideration for people versus profit. Not true. When we invest in each other and deepen our relationships, it creates tighter bonds between us, which opens up space for creative collaboration. People feel more engaged and more loyal at work and less likely to leave. So that's one of the biggest lies in business that's been getting turned over recently. And I know you are helping contribute to this. As we look beyond the organizational context into the cultural context, these lies that have been used to reinforce the disconnection worldview have created programming that certain types of people are better and certain types of people are worse. And a lot of what we're healing right now is creating a leveling. In that regard, there's so much work on the path to power to do around our identities. Yes, we all have inner power. We're all made of essence. We all have gifts and shadows. We're all on this human journey, and we're all in human bodies that our societies tell stories about and that have systems designed to support the benefits of certain identities and systems designed to hold back those of us inhabiting certain identities. So in our pursuit of power that serves the whole, we need to learn deeply about the many facets of our identity. We need to understand the privileges conferred to us as a result of this cultural programming, because that's the context we exist in. If we're going to transmute that context, we have to understand it. We have to understand what we have. And oftentimes the blind spots exist where we have privilege, because where we don't have privilege from that cultural programming, we know so deeply from the hurts that have been inflicted in many moments throughout our lives. Each of us has a constellation of facets of our identity, from our gender to our nationality, our religious affiliation, our sexual orientation, our race, and so much more. Our physical ability, our cognitive ability, our mental health. So many things. And the things that we don't often pay attention to are where we get to learn the most, because we've had less friction than others there. And if we don't understand the type of friction that the rest of our human family experiences in those ways, we can't really be a good steward for designing systems that serve the whole. So that's usually where unconscious power abuse can happen, because it results from privilege and not knowing. But just because we don't know doesn't mean we're not responsible for it. So again, in stepping into more power, we get to take more responsibility for our context and for what we live in. So as a short list, we get to learn about the program we carry. We get to learn about the privilege we have. We get to learn about the context of others who have identities that are different from ourselves, that are in non-privileged situations. And we get to do the work and the practice of how we deprogram these false beliefs that make us think we're better or worse than anyone, because we're not. And the more that we reinforce connection and actual relationship and service, the better we'll be off. So here's where we have the opportunity to ask, who do I serve and why? What are the types of power I already have as a result of where I am in life and in my career and in the identity I inhabit? And how can I confer the benefits of that power to ever more beings in a widening circle, to be of service of them, to be an ally to them, to learn and be curious and put voice forward where I have the opportunity to do so. This is like a baby bite of an enormous topic. It is the work of our lives. It is a lifetime journey where we get to be in the practice of connection, where we get to be in the practice of taking responsibility more and more and more. So it's important to have framing and set some context as we embark with each other on our own inner journey. Because yes, we're understanding our inner power more deeply. And in order to do that effectively, we have to understand the power that we've been given. So yes, we're understanding our inner power more effectively and cultivating it so that the flow of life can move through us more fully in our essence. And we need to understand the systems of created human power, the stories that have been constructed, for better or worse, that currently exist if we want to help transform them. That's our opportunity.